It's 12 o'clock, so we're going to start. Welcome, everyone. As you join, please introduce yourselves in the chat and where you're joining from. Thank you for joining this WIMCAP program, and it's called Enthroning Good Corporate Governance, and it's a focus on MSMEs. So as you join, please introduce yourselves in the chat and tell us where you're joining from. Thank you for joining us. I see Nena from Lagos, Precious. Adenike from Abuja, welcome. Please keep it coming. Let's have an interactive session today. Hello, Grace. Good day, Bisola. Welcome. Welcome, Zainab. Welcome, Yemisi. All right, my name is Enimiani Nagbadion, and I am founder of Arcadia Montessori School, a preschool for young children. And we focus on ensuring that the whole child is developed. And I thank you for joining us today. And as you join, like I said, please introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're joining from. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about WIMBIZ. WIMBIZ is Women in Management, Business and Public Service, and it's a nonprofit organization that has, over the last 22 years, implemented programs that inspire, empower, and advocate for greater representation of women in leadership positions and in the public and private sector. WIMBIZ is a volunteer-based organization funded largely by donations and contributions by members and partners, and is a supporter for the Code of Ethics and Conduct for NGOs. For more information on WIMBIZ, please visit www.wimbiz.org. Okay, we would like to mention some of our sponsors for today. And would like to thank DCSL Corporate Service Limited and LIRS for supporting the June edition of the 2023 WIMBIZ Capital Training Program. At the end of the session, a link will be shared for a quick evaluation. Please endeavor to complete the evaluation, as we would love to have your feedback. It helps us to plan future programs. We kindly invite dear participants who are not WIMBIZ associates to join us today. And for inquiries, please contact us via membership@wimbiz.org. You can see it on the screen. All right, I'd like to invite Dr. Joy Issa, our Vice Chair, Programs Committee of WIMBIZ, for the opening remarks. Please welcome her in the chat.
Good afternoon, fantastic WIMBIZ ladies and even some of our gentlemen who joined us. Very nice to be here. Welcome from Abuja, welcome from Lagos, from Jos. It's fantastic to have so many enthusiastic entrepreneurs and career women here joining us. And we really appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining on time. This is one session that I personally have been looking forward to, because as a budding entrepreneur myself, learning what the government expects of us, learning what is required of us with the changing roles in government, with updated policies, becomes very, very important so that we are compliant. It's easy to kind of find yourself at the wrong end. And so we really appreciate our speakers today for taking out time to come and share with us, to come and help us learn. Thank you very much to WIMBIZ HQ, to our board members, our founders, everyone. Honestly, this is such an amazing platform to belong to. And we welcome you again. And I hand over back to Ms. Enimian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Issa. All right, I hope you guys are ready. So we're going to begin with a poll question, right? If WIMBIZ can please put up, WIMBIZ HQ, if you can please put up the poll questions. And if you can answer the questions for us, let's see where we are at, so that the speakers will know how to direct their training today. So we have about let me see, I think it's 5 questions. So we'll give you guys about 5 minutes to answer, and then we'll move along. Thank you. I can see some people already answering. You will see on your screen, so please answer, and let's see where we all are today. We know the answers. So the first question is, does good corporate governance promote ethical behavior within a company? What do you guys think? And then the second is good corporate governance essential for the long-term success of a company? The third is, does good corporate governance help in building trust and credibility within stakeholders? What do you guys think? I'm sure we have many SMEs here, so, and MSMEs as well. Let's see what you guys think. Should companies establish a code of conduct to guide ethical behavior and promote good corporate governance? And the final question is, good corporate governance contributes to attracting and retaining talented employees. Do you agree, or are you neutral, or do you disagree? We're having lots of answers. Thank you. We have about 3 more minutes, and then we'll close the poll. Okay, we're still getting a few answers. Thank you for answering. Okay, I think we've gotten most answers. So can we please see the results? Right. So for the first answer is, does good corporate governance promote ethical behavior within a company? And it's a resounding yes. Is good corporate governance essential for the long-term success of a company? Once again, we have yes. Does good corporate governance help in building trust and credibility with stakeholders? And that's a yes as well. Should companies establish a code of conduct to guide ethical behavior and promote good corporate governance? Yes, we have a few maybes. Good corporate governance contributes to attracting and retaining talented employees. We have 84% who say strongly agree, and we have 16% who are actually neutral. So that's where we are at the moment. So I think our speakers will be able to use this to to do the training. All right. So we're going to be introducing our first speaker. And if you just, our first speaker is Ann Ago, who is the General Manager, Head Company Secretarial Unit of DCSL. She has considerable experience in corporate and commercial law, and she has acquired expertise in managing the compliance requirements of companies in the financial sector of the Nigerian economy. If you'd like to know more about her, please see her bio on screen. And I'd like Anne to please introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Eminium. You're doing a fantastic job just anchoring the event for today. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being on time. I'd like to especially thank WIMBIZ for giving us the platform to have the conversation with us today. Eminium has introduced, my name is Anne and I work at DCSL. And today I'll be speaking to us on the very interesting topic of how as small and medium-sized enterprises we can enthrone corporate governance, or try at least to set in place or put in place the minimum standards that can help our businesses run effectively. So thank you once again. I'll just take a minute to share my screen so we can run through the slides together. But I think that the audience has kind of done my work for me. They've just completed it quite beautifully. And I'm not so sure if there's any need to go on with the session, because based on the feedback that we received on the poll, I would say we all are on the same page. And I think the first question, we had a 97% positive score, the second 98, the third 97, the fourth 98 again. And I think it was only on the last question, the fifth question, that we had an 83% score, you know. So I think my job is pretty much done. We're all agreed that we need to have corporate governance in place in all our organizations. I think the sore point is this issue of talent. Does good corporate governance contribute to attracting and retaining talent? I see that, well, 83% I think is a majority, but we still have some room to go. I think that probably the reason why that question was not in the 90s is because of what is going on in Nigeria now. I think even the multinationals, the large corporates have lost a lot of staff, the banks. This Jackpot syndrome has not left any company untouched. So I'm sure that that's possibly why our feedback on that wasn't particularly as high as the other questions. So I have exactly 25 minutes to speak to us or to lead the conversation. And the topic again is enthroning good corporate governance. I'm just trying to put this on slideshow, yes. And very quickly, we're going to be talking about governance itself, what it is, and then we'll look quite quickly at the principles which should guide all of the governance initiatives that we implement, and then the importance of it, because there's a lot of conversation out there that governance really isn't quite relevant for SMEs. But I can tell you, and I hope that at the end of this session, you will all agree that it is important. We'll look at the challenges for us as SMEs. What are the challenges to implementing good corporate governance? Then we'll look at a very critical issue of what are the minimum standards that we as SMEs should implement, because we all know that one of the major challenges is the cost of implementation. We'll look at how we can meet minimum standards and still manage our costs. Then we'll look at succession planning, which is one of the critical elements of good corporate governance from an SME perspective. The global companies, the multinationals are all jumping on board with the issue of succession planning, but as SMEs, it's quite critical to our businesses. And then we'll look at some of the compliance requirements from a governance perspective, and then we will conclude. Now, very quickly, I'm not going to dwell much on the definition of corporate governance, but corporate governance in very simple terms is a system by which companies are directed and controlled. Forgive me for not asking, just to confirm that you can all hear me and that you can see my slides on the screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. I just assumed that you could. Pardon me. So as I was saying, in very simple terms, corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. In very simple terms, it's the way that we manage and run our businesses. That's what essentially is corporate governance. And there are a few other definitions there: the set of processes, customs, policies, laws, and institutions affecting the way a corporation is directed, administered, or controlled. If you look at all the other definitions, the one or two words that are quite common in all the definitions are the words directed and controlled or managed. Those three words come up in all the definitions. So essentially, how do we manage or run the businesses that we're currently running or that we currently own? Having defined corporate governance, let's now quickly look at the principles. So corporate governance essentially was something that evolved many years ago, and it has continued to grow. And over the years, they've come to be known 7 critical principles that embody what corporate governance is about. So embedded in these 7 principles are the things that make up corporate governance, if I may say so. The very first one is accountability, and I'm sure we understand clearly what that means. We have to run the businesses in an accountable manner, not just for the benefit of us, the business owners, but for other stakeholders as well. Transparency and disclosure and openness is the second very important principle of corporate governance. Transparency in the sense that we have to run our businesses in a transparent manner. We have to be willing to be open. So if, for instance, the tax authorities are requesting for information, we have to be in a position to provide that information without any fear or hesitation. It also then speaks to the issue of timely and accurate disclosures. One of the critical elements of disclosure as businesses is our financial records or financial statements, and typically we'll submit those, and as part of our tax returns, I believe. So the timeliness and accuracy of the information that we disclose in those financial statements are quite critical and are embedded in the principle of transparency and openness. Responsibility is another key principle of corporate governance. We are called to run our businesses in a responsible manner, meaning that we have to take steps to in place processes that help us manage any risk that may potentially impact our businesses. And then integrity and ethical conduct. I think this is a given for any business that is being run in Nigeria. Unfortunately, this is one of the major areas where there's quite a lot of compromise, particularly given the kind of environment that we're doing business in. But I'm sure that as business owners, we're focused on trying, to manage the societal expectations as it borders on integrity, and that we try to ensure that no matter what we do not compromise the integrity of the businesses that we're running. Very close to the issue of integrity and ethical conduct is reputation, because it is the things that we do as businesses, the integrity standards that we uphold, that essentially impact our reputation, not just as an organization, but as a business owner itself. So it's important to always bear that in mind, that the things that we do, how we run and manage that business, eventually impacts the reputation. Sometimes you hear things like, well, that's a very good company. You can always count on them. If they say they will deliver your product at this time, they never fail to deliver. That's what, running our business properly helps to achieve good reputation. Fairness and independence, those are the last two governance principles. Just to say that none of these principles by itself is sufficient. So it's important that in implementing or trying to live or run our businesses based on these principles, that we are able to, focus on all of them. It is in harmonizing and ensuring that they are all being practiced that we can more effectively enthrone good governance. So what does corporate governance look like? What's the framework? What does it entail? Essentially, we know that at the very top of any organization are the shareholders, but the shareholders are now just one part of the ultimate stakeholders of any organization. We have the wider umbrella of stakeholders, and our shareholders are just part of those stakeholders. So governance has gone beyond primarily focusing on business profitability for the benefit of shareholders, to enable them derive value on their investment. Now, governance as it stands today speaks to also protecting the interest of other stakeholders. And those other stakeholders include our creditors, our employees, our customers, because without the customers, there cannot be a business. So our customers and the society at large. So it's important to bear that in mind, that our businesses are accountable to not just the shareholders, but to the wider umbrella of stakeholders. And then after the shareholders, we have the board, and then we have management. The board delegates its authority for managing the company to management, and management is accountable to the board, while the board is accountable not just to the shareholders, but to the other wider group of stakeholders. On the other hand, we have our regulators, our external stakeholders who help to protect our businesses. The essence of regulation is to help protect the businesses that we run. How effective our regulators in Nigeria are, I think, is another kettle of fish entirely. But internally, we have, on the external side as well, we have our enablers, and our enablers are essentially our auditors, any advisor that we engage to provide some advisory support, our consultants, if we have external counsel. All of those are external stakeholders, but their role is to enable, to support our business as we progress. The last bit of stakeholders I want to speak to are internal stakeholders. Our internal stakeholders are essentially management and all of the business units within the organization. Sometimes we don't have so this is what governance expects, but as SMEs, our structures may not allow for a robust framework as is seen on the slide. So just to say that at the very minimum, we should have at least 2 or 3 of these critical internal stakeholders or internal support functions that help us to manage our businesses effectively. So how does governance impact us as SMEs? What's the relevance of corporate governance to us as SMEs? I am sure we're all agreed on the very simple fact that SMEs are the backbone of a developing economy like Nigeria. We are the ones that have the capacity to create job opportunities. We generally just drive economic growth and act as a major force in poverty alleviation. I'm sure that if this question was part of the questions that we had on the poll, we would have had 100% yes vote on the matter. So we're all agreed. So therefore, good corporate governance practices are, I think, a critical tool for the growth and effectiveness and sustainability of SMEs. And I do hope that by the end of our conversation, we would all be in agreement on this particular topic, on this particular statement. And then, the reason why we are here talking about corporate governance today is because we recognize the value of it, I believe, and it is therefore then imperative that, having recognized the value of it, that we take steps to implement, to embrace governance wholeheartedly, if not for the sake of anything, for the sake of our businesses' profitability and sustainability. There's a lot of research in the governance space that proves that good corporate governance practices actually help to guarantee business profitability and sustainability in the long term. At the different stages of growth that we are as SMEs, there are a few key considerations that we as owners of the businesses take on board from a governance perspective. One of which is the ownership structure. Most SMEs in Nigeria are sole proprietorships. I'm sure we all are agreed. There are few that are not, that are companies limited by shares, but primarily most SMEs are sole proprietorships, which means that they are owned by one person, and that one person is the owner, the manager, and everything. So owner manager, that's the ownership structure of, I would say, 90% of SMEs in Nigeria. Composition of boards. At the point of setting up that entity, most SMEs or the founders of those SMEs put as shareholders, directors, because those are requirements for incorporation. They put their family members, typically their husbands, their spouses, and their children as shareholders and owners and directors for record purposes. So that's typically how it works with SMEs. There are very few SMEs that have taken on board, you know, the practice, the good practice of establishing those entities without the direct involvement of members of the family. So it is our relationships, our filial ties, typically that determine who our directors are, as opposed to the skill and experience and expertise that those directors are required to bring. I mean, if you're adding your 15-year-old child as a director because it's a requirement for registration, there's little or nothing that that child can do at that age to help the growth of the company. The nature of shareholders, typically, like I said, is family members. Funding, typically we fund these organizations. We put our sweat equity, the little savings, we just put everything that we've got into the business. Where we go to a bank for a loan or something, some of those investors, let's just use that bracket, that's a wide umbrella of people that lend money to us to start our businesses. Some of those investors would typically insist on adherence with compliance of corporate governance standards, but typically, more often than not, even the people that invest in our businesses at the very early stages of those investment companies are friends, family members, or at the very most, the banks. But the bank will probably not be interested in how you're running the business on a day-to-day basis. What their focus will be is whether you are able to meet your obligations in terms of repayment. So that's the only focus that the bank will have, and will not be interested in anything else. Legal and regulatory environment. So for most SMEs, their interest at the point of setting up is really, is there any organization or any parastatal or government agency that the business, the kind of business I'm doing falls directly under? Where there aren't any, then there's no need, typically no need for governance. But where there are one or two, people are more interested in doing things right, so that the agencies have nothing to, you know, penalize us for. So the higher the number of regulators or agencies that we have to deal with, the greater the likelihood of compliance. Having said that, as a governance requirement, at the very minimum, we have to have within the organization a few key governance, organs of governance. And the ones that we have highlighted here for your attention is typically the board, executive management. We've spoken about shareholders and investors. And then a few of our internal enablers typically are the company secretary and the internal audit function. Now, the organs of governance, there's a plethora, probably about 10 to 15, depending on the kind of business that you are running, that you know, a lot of more governance organs within that different organizations. But the scale, the complexity, the kind of business that it is will typically determine the kinds of organs that you should have. But at the very minimum, each organization should, at the very barest minimum, have this 4 or 5 organs of governance: the board, management, shareholders and investors in one bracket. And remember, we said something about a wider pool of stakeholders. So the company secretary and the internal audit function. And we'll be seeing the roles, the different roles that these different organs of governance play within the governance structure. Now, the board's role is essentially leadership, directing management on how to run the business. And we'll be speaking a bit more as to the key areas where the board is expected to provide leadership and oversight. The expectations are that the board will help management to run the company in an ethical and sustainable manner. And we have defined some of the expectations that the stakeholders will have of the board. Now, these are the critical areas that the board is expected or required to provide oversight and direction. Leadership, the board is required to lead, and the board is supposed to provide independent judgment and ensure that management is running the business, not just in an ethical, but in a sustainable manner. In terms of leadership, the board directors are expected, to have time to provide leadership of the business. They're supposed to have the appropriate skill and knowledge and experience, and then they're expected, and the very minimum, to ask the right questions of management. It's the board that defines what the KPIs of management are and approves all of those things, KPIs of executive management, and the key management staff within any organization. And then it is also the board that defines corporate culture. So corporate culture is something that is defined from the top, and the top here is the board, and the management then ensures that that culture is trickled down and lived, if I may use that expression, by everyone that works within that organization. That the culture that we say that we have is something that we can determine or feel the pulse of by meeting anybody that works within this organization. And then disclosure. And disclosure here relates to our financial records, our financial statements. The board has a responsibility, and this is a legal requirement actually, to ensure that our records are true and fair, and that they contain accurate information. And then strategic direction, that's a significant role of the board, and one which quite a lot of us SMEs are not quite on top of in terms of realizing the value that boards bring to the table. And strategic direction is one of those areas, implementing, not monitoring the implementation, because it's executive management that implements. And also within the bracket of strategic direction, within that responsibility is the responsibility for succession planning, and then ensuring that we have budgets on an annual basis and that we are not spending outside of those budgets and things like that. Very quickly on executive management, well, the executive management is the one that is required to have the skill and expertise to run the business. So executive management is a human capital, essentially, of any organization. So we are involved or responsible for the day-to-day running of the company. And it is the executive management that executes or implements strategy. And business development is also a role that executive management is expected to perform. The expectations from us as executive management, those are things that are listed here on that. Ethical conduct, avoid conflict of interest, aligning our responsibilities with the interests of shareholders, and ensuring compliance with legal and statutory requirements. I'm not going to delve too much into that because this is an area that I'm sure that most of us are quite conversant with. The internal audit function is a critical function within any organization, small, big, large, medium. It's a critical function because the role of that function is to provide internal audit and control services, but also to detect fraud, so fraud detection and prevention and investigation and risk management. It is expected that that function is one that is very independent from management. Within a proper governance structure, that function reports directly to a board audit committee. And in the case of a small company, it should report directly to the board with a dotted reporting line to management. The expectation also is that the internal audit function will provide independent and objective assurance, not just to the board, but to the organization, and ensure the integrity of our internal processes and procedures as a tool for combating fraud. So it's very important that once we reach a particular stage of growth in our businesses, this is a function that we should in place. Recall we spoke to the minimum governance organs that as a business we should have to be able to implement effective governance practices. The third bit of it, or the fourth rather, is the company secretary, who should then double as our compliance officer. So the company secretary provides support to the board, is a custodian of good corporate governance practices, and assists the board in implementing and developing a corporate governance structure, a culture rather. He or she is also a governance advisor to the board and to the organization, is responsible for compliance and interfacing with our stakeholders, primarily the shareholders, but any other stakeholders that are within the purview of that function. And then the expectations are that that function will ensure compliance with all regulatory and statutory requirements that impact the business, and act as a central source of guidance to the board and management on matters of ethics, sustainability, good governance, as well as filing returns to all the authorities or agencies that we have an obligation to file returns to. I will not dwell on the role of shareholders and investors. It's quite straightforward. Moving on very quickly, I'm trying to manage my time. Moving on very quickly to the importance of corporate governance. We cannot belabor the issue. And I was very excited with the feedback that we got from the poll. That feedback has established that we all agree that corporate governance has an important role to play in our businesses. It protects stakeholders, including shareholders. It helps us to mitigate risk. It helps us to comply with all our compliance frameworks and requirements. It promotes accountability, ensures CSR, corporate social responsibility, and improves efficiency. My personal view is that the very ultimate importance of corporate governance is that it helps to guarantee sustainability, both particularly in the long term. So sustainability is the last bit of it that I would like to add. Imbibing the spirit of corporate governance is not something that we should take lightly if we want to achieve or build sustainable organizations. It's something that goes beyond ticking the box. Oh, where corporate governance says we should do this, we've ticked it, we have done it. It should be a culture, a way of life, a way of doing business. So our governance practices should be, not driven by the fact that there's a minimum requirement, but should be driven by the fact that we understand the value of governance, and we are therefore implementing these practices for the benefit that it will derive from them. So it's important to, have that at the back of our minds as the reason why we're implementing governance practices and ensuring that it is part of the business, that it is the culture of the businesses that we're running. Now, quite a lot of the pushback that we at DCSL had, so maybe not pushback, but the feedback that we have received from a lot of the SMEs that we engage with is that there are too many challenges. And one of the major ones is the cost. There's just some position. Most people think that it's very expensive to implement corporate governance. But I'm sure you will agree from the little you have heard so far that it really isn't expensive. You have to have, depending on the stage of growth, and we'll look at the cycles of growth of SMEs just before we conclude. And if you see that it depends on the stage of growth that you are at, it comes to a stage, no matter how well you have been doing, that you need to take a look at how you have, what level of governance practices you have adopted. And one of the major things that has been mentioned as a challenge is the resources. I mentioned that costs and all of that, human capital and things like that. But I think that if you have come to a particular stage of growth, that argument is no longer very tenable. The attitude that it is not necessary if business is going well, why fix it or replace it if it's not broken? That's one of the arguments that we have heard quite often. Resistance to change. This is an African thing, where as Africans, we're not very open to change. So the fact that you are implementing new processes, policies, and structures in your business, sometimes maybe you, the owner, is open to implementing those changes, but the people that you are trying to get on board are resistant somewhat. So that's one of the challenges that we've heard quite often. There's also a very strong misconception that corporate governance is only relevant to multinationals and large companies. I hope that from our conversation, in fact, the results of the poll tells me that we all do not agree with that. Cultural issues. As Africans, typically, we're not very open to sharing information. So a reluctance to share information with people that are not within the organization is one of the major challenges that has been mentioned. Then legacy, keeping it in the family. It's a family business. It's been a family business for 30 years. Why do we want to open it up to external third parties? Is one of the issues that a lot of us SMEs have put up as a challenge, really, for not implementing governance practices. It's not worth the trouble. It can be a bit, I don't want to use the word tedious, because tedium comes when you do something over and over again. After a while, you're just tired of doing it. With every passing year, with every passing day, there are new, governance is evolving. So the issue of becoming tedious is not tenable anymore. One of the other issues that most SMEs will struggle with is the issue of accountability, of transparency. We spoke to that. Those are two principles of corporate governance. We've spoken to that earlier. We also struggle with, putting the human resource or capital that helps us to manage risk management and internal controls. And we have spoken to the very critical role of the internal audit function and a critical governance organ. So we have to take steps to ensure that we at the very minimum, we have that organ within our organizations. Then the inability to define and implement strategy. At the very minimum, before you start a business, I'm sure that this is something that we have all done before we started our businesses, developed a strategy, done some kind of feasibility analysis, done some market survey. Is there a need for this business? Is there a gap in the market that my solution is likely to address? Those are some of the preliminary things that as businesses, but strategy is not static. Strategy is something that changes. We all, as businesses, experienced the impact of COVID in 2020 and in the earlier parts of 2021. So we know that some of us had to, readjust or retweak and revisit our strategies to ensure that they were still meeting realities at the time when that COVID outbreak happened. Also, the lack of distinction between, company and personal funds. As business owners, we typically will not see the need for, ensuring that we define what our remuneration is and that there's a distinction that we're not spending monies for personal use from, the corporate accounts. You have your personal account and then there's a corporate account. And then the last bit I would like to touch on is the issue of succession planning. It's an issue that is quite delicate in our local environment here in Nigeria, but generally as Africans, we don't like to talk about succession planning because once someone mentions succession planning, we think about death. Oh, this person is trying to say that I should start planning for my exit, death or whatever form of exit that may potentially portend for us as a business. But succession planning is a critical element of business sustainability and one that we should take on board and not take lightly. Why must we plan for succession? Or why are we hesitant or reluctant to plan for succession? Fear of control, of power. You have run that business successfully for 50 years. It's now a known brand. There's brand equity and all of that. The market is, if you're talking about the water manufacturing business, you can't talk about that without mentioning my business. That's the kind of reputation you have built. So the fear of losing that status, that control and power over that business is something that holds us back from planning for succession. But succession planning is that thing that helps us ensure business continuity. I think it's one of the most critical elements for business continuity. Nobody knows tomorrow, so it's important that we plan. Some of the other challenges are concerned around erosion of our legacy. You have built a business, you put in your sweat and blood, and you don't want that legacy that you have built to just be thrown away by someone that you bring into the business to manage or run. Fear of continuity with respect to business culture and values. If we have set up a culture that we think is a beautiful culture, we've defined our values, the organization is living, the people are working, employees are living by those values, we are hesitant to bring an outsider on board to manage the business or to let anyone else, even within the business, manage, because we think that the person may erode that culture or the values that we have embedded. Fear of becoming irrelevant, the sentiments around, handing over my business to my children, even in the face of incompetence or lack of interest. Sometimes the children are in different parts of the world. They're not really, they've done something, they've studied something totally different. They're not really business oriented, but you insist because you want it to stay in the family, that the children should take over the business. That is something that, help prevents us from seeing the value of, there's nothing wrong with your children running the business and working with you, but they should work through the business, learn the ropes, become experienced, be skilled in the business, and more importantly, are they interested? That's, I think, the first consideration. Cultural, people are reluctant to write wills, so that's the apathy that is associated with the fact that if we're talking about succession planning, that means we are dying, which is what also translates to us not always being open to writing a will. But it's important that as business owners, we think beyond ourselves. And the first step to succession planning is identifying potential successors, training and developing them, measuring their performance within the business, and mentoring those candidates that we have identified as potential successors. If it's your child, your relative, or someone that you brought into the business but has done incredibly well, then these are the steps that you should take to try and ensure that the person is good and ready to take your place. And so sometimes it's not a permanent replacement. Sometimes you should be able to go on a holiday for 3 weeks, a month, and not be required to be making calls every day to ensure that everything is going well. You could start by ensuring that this person is someone that can just stand in the gap for a few weeks, and then you continue to monitor and measure their performance and see how well they are doing. So from a standpoint of the minimum requirements of corporate governance, we have a code in Nigeria, a Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance that doesn't distinguish between private, public, or public interest entities. It speaks to companies in general, both private and public. So it kind of expects that every organization that is a registered company in Nigeria will abide by the principles that are espoused in the code. And the philosophy of the code is to apply and explain. So if you are unable to apply some of the requirements that the code has put forward, you should explain why you are not able to comply with those requirements. We've spoken to the issue of the board, and the very important thing I'd like to highlight here is that when you're thinking about setting up a board, what is important is for you to take into consideration what the size of your business is, what is the scale and complexity of the business. That is what should inform you from a size perspective. How many people do I need? And for us as SMEs, maybe we don't want to start on full on putting a board in place. We want to start with maybe an advisory board, something that is a bit more fluid, people that are able to just provide guidance and support. But it's important that we try to ensure that the advisory board meets at least quarterly or as frequently as we think is required, so that they provide us with the direction and guidance we need as we run the business. There's value to be had from people with an outside perspective of the business, because sometimes as business owners, we are a little, I don't want to use the word narrow-minded because it kind of has a negative connotation, but I'm sure we understand what I'm trying to say. So that entity, that organ, that body called the board or the advisory board, whatever way we want to go, is able to provide the guidance that we need in running our businesses. There are a few pointers here from a minimum compliance level from the code on directors, and the distinction between executives and non-executives from a remuneration perspective. So that it's only your non-executives, those are the people that are from outside of the business that are required or expected to be paid some form of sitting allowance. Executives or people within the business are not allowed to collect any form of sitting allowance because they are employees technically and are therefore remunerated on a monthly basis for their service and the work that they do. The board or advisory board, whichever way we go, is expected or required to meet at least once every quarter. Directors are expected to attend meetings and to be present for meetings, at all meetings. And this is now, attendance at meetings is now a requirement or a basis for re-election or not re-electing a person as a director. So in putting together a board, some of the things that we want to think about are the individual's availability. Are they going to be able to give me the kind of support that I need? Will they have time? Will they be able to commit to the business? Quite a lot of us business owners, when we're trying to put up a board, are thinking about putting names, people that are known within the industry or the sector. Not always necessarily important, because what you want to look out for are people that will add value to your business and will provide the kind of guidance that you need. So in summary, we have talked about placing internal governance structures, the minimum, and we talked about those 5 organs, the board, we have stakeholders, the company secretary, then the internal, and typically if you are required to prepare financial statements, then you must also have an external auditor. We also need to put in place people on the board that will provide effective board oversight. We have to file our returns mandatorily. There are certain returns that are required to be filed at the Corporate Affairs Commission, and depending on what kind of sector we're doing business in, there's also some other statutory requirements. We need to, as a very minimum, ensure that we are on top of our game where it relates to regulatory changes. What are those changes that will impact or are likely to impact the business? While the very minimum required to maintain proper records, our accounting records and any other kinds of records that are relevant to our business, we have to define a clear strategy and place a business continuity plan so that any sudden changes do not throw us off the curve. We need to implement risk and management and internal control measures. And some of those functions are things that can be outsourced. So if you are not a business that is yet at the stage of growth that you can have people internally, you can outsource some of those functions, risk management and internal control. We have small firms that provide bespoke services to SMEs. Then you have to ensure that you define KPIs, set measurable performance indicators. We have to, at the very minimum, plan for succession, not only for the long term, but the immediate, so that we can always accommodate taking some time off to to relax and do the other things that we enjoy doing. We also should seek professional advice depending on the kind of business that you do. You might need legal, finance, investment advice. You should be able to seek advice when required and ensure that corporate governance is a culture, a way of doing business, and not just something that we do for the sake of doing it. These are some of the regulatory authorities in Nigeria that as a business we all may, not necessarily all, but these are just a few of those that may have an impact, or that we have a reporting requirement, or that we engage with as a business. But the one that we all as businesses are affiliated with is the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is the very first one on the slide. My time is up, so I'm just going to round off by saying that I hope that I have been able to convince you that your votes or your feedback on the poll, by the very significant positives that we had, or the resounding yeses that we had, I've been able to prove by the few things we have spoken about that you voted right, and that corporate governance essentially is not something that we do for the sake of it. We do it as a way of life, a way of doing business, and something that adds value and guarantees in the very long term the sustainability of the businesses that we are running. Thank you very much for listening, and my sincere apologies. I think I'm 5 minutes out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Anne Agbo. Wasn't that a wealth of information? Oh my goodness, you have been able to convince me, certainly. And I just want to see everyone, please give her a clap in the comments. Thank you so much. Give her flowers. Thank you for all the information that you've given us. And I hope you guys have been able to see your business in a different light. And so we're going to go on next. If you have any questions for Mrs. Anne, could you please put it in the Q&A section of of Zoom so that we can ask our questions at the end, but please write them now so that you don't forget. We're going to show you a video of DCSL Corporate Services Limited and LIRS, our sponsors. So please watch. Thank you. I don't think we have sound.
Introducing the SME Blue Bundle packages from DCSL Corporate Services Limited. The SME Blue Bundle packages provide a range of compliance services for small to medium-sized businesses to ensure continuous compliance with regulatory
We don't have
requirements,
video
corporate
now.
governance best practices, and to ensure SMEs are well positioned for growth. The SME Blue Bundle packages comprise 4 bundles: the Sterling Bundle, the Silver Bundle, the Gold Bundle, and the Platinum Bundle. These packages are tailored to your specific business needs, no matter the size of the organization or the industry in which you operate. They are carefully crafted to provide a range of essential company secretarial and governance services, such as board constitution,
I don't think we can see the screen either.
filing of annual returns, statutory health checks, and much more. Please contact us at info@dcsl.com.ng for more information on the SME Blue Bundle package best suited for your business. Give your business a profitable edge and take advantage of the SME Blue Bundle packages offered by DCSL today.
Would you please pause and start again, because we didn't have video this time, even though the sound came back on. Thank you. Please drop your questions in the Q&A section so that we can ask as many questions and make this lively at the end. Are we able to show the video, or should we show it after the next training? Okay, while we wait, I'll look at the comments. Thanks for an informative session. A wonderful session, so many useful nuggets, I agree. Awesome session. I think everyone agrees that this was an amazing presentation. It was very simple and easy to understand. If we can share Mrs. Ann Agbo's LinkedIn in the chat so that we can follow her on LinkedIn. And if anyone needs DCSL services. Hopefully the issue will be resolved soon and we can continue. So how many of us here can say that we have corporate governance structures set up in our businesses? I'd like to see your comments. Chinelu says we sure do. Well done. Who else is brave enough to say that they don't have it yet?
Introducing the SME
There we are.
packages from DCSL Corporate Services Limited. The SME Blue Bundle packages provide a range of compliance services for small to medium-sized businesses to ensure continuous compliance with regulatory requirements, corporate governance best practices, and to ensure SMEs are well-positioned for growth. The SME Blue Bundle packages comprise 4 bundles: the Sterling Bundle, the Silver Bundle, the Gold Bundle, and the Platinum Bundle. These packages are tailored to your specific business needs, no matter the size of the organization or the industry in which you operate. They are carefully crafted to provide a range of essential company secretarial and governance services, such as board constitution, onboarding and induction of directors, filing of annual returns, statutory health checks, and much more. Please contact us at info@dcsl.com.ng for more information on the SME Blue Bundle package best suited for your business. Give your business a profitable edge and take advantage of the SME Blue Bundle packages offered by DCSL today.
Thank you, DCSL. So please patronize DCSL, and they were our sponsors as well. So thank you for your sponsorship and for supporting WIMBIZ always. Okay, so we are going to move on now to the next training, and it's understanding risks and consequences of non-compliance. So these are the risks and consequences of non-compliance. And we have Dr. Folashade Ajunikoka, who is the Director, Informal Sector and Special Duties of LIRS. Dr. Folashade Ajunikoka is a lawyer with over 23 years post-corp experience and a tax practitioner for over 20 years with expertise in revenue management, emerging markets, and developing economies. So please welcome Dr. Folashade onto the group, please. You guys have been amazing in the comments, so please give her a resounding welcome, make her feel welcome while she starts her own training today. Welcome, Dr. Folashade. Yeah, I can see the welcomes in the comments. Welcome, welcome. I love some of the comments, especially Ekere Obong, who said, "Not I, said the cat." When I asked, do you guys have corporate governance? She said, "Not I, said the cat."
If I may, Ms. Eniyen, so our second speaker is having a technical glitch. So if we can take questions and answer for Ms. Anne, and then we'll wrap up at the end. Yes, thank you.
All right. So we have the Q&A. Can I have questions from the Q&A section? And can we please spotlight Mrs. Anne? Okay, so we have a question. Are we spotlighting? Okay, yeah. So we have a question from Anne Wulika, and she says, what is the number to have in an organization for one to think of having a board, please?
Thank you very much, Enimian. And thank you, Ms. Uche Obi, for that question. So I don't think it's about numbers. It's not a game of numbers. So we have one-man businesses that are doing turnovers of 100 million or more, potentially more. So it should really be about the business that you're doing. You recall we talked about the size and complexity of the business. Is it a business that has grown exponentially and one that you required some bit of, you're now at the stage where you want to expand, for instance, and you require some bit of support? That's the role that the board should then fill. So it's not about the number, because my understanding of your question as to the number to have in an organization speaks to me about employees. So it has nothing to do with that. You have tech companies that is just the owner of the business and maybe 2 or 3 other people sitting in different parts of the world doing the work. And that 4-man team has a board because the business is pulling in revenues, running into millions of dollars, and they think that this is something that can potentially go beyond what they're currently doing, and they want some external support. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but summarizing, it's not about numbers, it's about the size and complexity of your business and whether or not you need some help running that business, some guidance. So I think those should be the key considerations, and the stage of growth that you are at, that should be part of what you should consider in taking a decision as to whether or not you need a board.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question from Ruben, and he says, what will be the best governance structure for a nursery/primary school?
So for a nursery/primary school, the best governance structure, in my opinion, is because that's a company that, if it's registered at the CAC, that's a company that is a trust, in an incorporated trust, or a company limited by guarantee. Those are the 2 forms, legal forms, that companies like that are registered as. So what you would typically need in such a in that kind of environment is an advisory board, not a board of directors in the technical legal sense of it. An advisory board is what you need for that kind of organization. And then you should have on it people who have some kind of teaching background, people who are familiar or have some experience with working with children and things like that. And then, of course, business development, growing that school will be some of your key concerns. So you should have someone that has like a background in business or marketing or sales. So those are some of the key considerations, but an advisory board is the best kind of governance board that you should have in a school.
Thank you, Mrs. Ann. Okay, so we have our second speaker here finally. So we'll allow her do her training, and then we'll ask more questions at the end of the session. Thank you, Dr. Folashade Adunikoka, for joining us.
Okay, I think she has gone off again. I don't know if it's a network or assistance. So please, let's just continue with the Q&A while she comes back on.
All right, no worries. So we have another question from Juliet, and she says, what advice would you give to an SME that is a startup and looking out for investors? What approach can the organization use?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it's very important. As a startup, you're just starting, so you technically don't have any governance framework, or you haven't in place any governance practices. I think the very first thing you want to start with, you recall there was a slide at the tail end, I think the second to the last slide, that spoke about the minimum requirements or minimum things that we should put an eye on as SMEs. And I'm just going to quickly share my screen and just mention the ones that I think are critical from that perspective. Sorry, my slide is, my laptop just froze, so I'm going to just go back. Yeah, that's it. Give me a minute. So I would say ensuring that your company statutory records were up to date will be one of those critical issues, because you want to be positioned for an audit, properly positioned, and because nobody's going to invest until they've done some kind of due diligence. So a due diligence is technically an audit. And one of the things they'll be looking at are your legal compliance practices, as well as your governance practices. So at the very minimum, the third bullet point on the screen speaks about ensuring that your returns are filed up to date. One of the typical returns is annual returns. No matter what kind of organization you are registered as at the CAC, you are required to file some annual returns. I think for companies limited, that by guarantee, there's a moratorium of 18 months, after which you're then required to file. But for other kinds of companies, I think it's after 1 year, exactly 12 months after. Even when you haven't done any business, you're required to file a statement saying we haven't done business, so there's nothing to report at this time. Then you're supposed to ensure that your records are up to date. So if you're coming to, if a potential investor would like to see your books, so you have to, from the very get-go, ensure that you're keeping proper books of accounts. So you need an accountant or someone to help you do that. And you don't need to employ them on a full contract. You can do an outsourced arrangement depending on what works for you and what you can afford. And then business strategy is something else that your potential investors will be interested in seeing. What is your plan for the business? What are your growth projections? What's the trajectory and all of that? And then, for the process itself, you will need to engage some kind of advice, someone that will guide you, a lawyer that will help you in reviewing whatever investment documents are put before you, So at the very minimum, ensuring that your returns are filed up to date, having a business or corporate strategy, maintaining proper books of accounts, and keeping an eye on all the regulatory requirements for that business, and knowing who your stakeholders in the regulatory space are. I think at the very minimum, you should be able to do these 4 or 5 things I have mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Apple. I think Yaya has had his or her hand up for a while. Would you like to ask a question before I go on to the next question? Yaya Sanusi. Okay, I'll just go on to the next question. So, Omolara asks, how do you uphold corporate governance in a faith-based setting business?
That's an interesting one. So when I hear faith-based, I'm thinking about a church or some religious organization. I think just ensuring that as an organization, we are abiding by the principles of corporate governance. And I think those principles are, if I dare say so, even more relevant to a faith-based organization. We talked about transparency. Are we running this organization in a transparent manner? Are we accountable? And when I say accountable, I recall a particular experience that I had in church where, we had what we call a bazaar. It's something that we do annually. And at the end of the bazaar, we were asking, because I was a member of the committee, and I was asking how much did we generate at the end of this bazaar. And the person who was chairman of the planning committee said, we don't need to tell you that. That's information that is relevant only to the pastors. And I was quite taken aback. So that speaks to transparency, openness. You have to, ensure that the organization is living by those principles, and that anybody that walks into it sees that, that organization is being run properly. And I know a few faith-based organizations that have advisory boards that meet maybe not as frequently as a proper, another kind of company would, but it's also important to then consider having an advisory board or a church board or a board of trustees that, is providing some leadership and guidance to the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abo. So the next question we have is, Let me chuckle a little. How do you manage your children that don't have an interest in your kind of business, and succession plan is very important for your business continuation?
I think we kind of established during our conversation that that's a major challenge for a lot of business owners, where your children are not interested, and it's a major constraint. But I think that children should be allowed to do what they want to do and not necessarily be expected to be interested in what their parents have done. So I think it's if you know from the start that your children are not interested in this kind of business, you try to focus on recruiting people that have an interest, people that you can potentially invest your time and energy and your resources in. But I know that the challenge also is, on the other hand, is the issue of commitment and loyalty, because the truth of the matter is that no matter how you invest in a person and the person is aware that you are grooming them potentially to be part of the leadership of the business, people are also still very focused primarily on their own interests. So getting that level of commitment or loyalty may be difficult, but it is possible. I know of organizations, and I'm sorry if I'm mentioning this, but I know most of us here know the story of Eventful and the fact that the person who is now running the business on a day-to-day basis is not a relative of the founder or the person that started the business. So it's possible. So we have, real life cases in Nigeria where people have run businesses and they handed over those businesses to people that they groomed internally. If your children are interested, that's a blessing you shouldn't take for granted, but also not something you should, you should let them learn the ropes. So you don't bring them at the point of there's an ED. Did he start from the beginning, the entry level? Let that child know that there's a progression. You have to deliver this, achieve this to grow to the next level. So take that child as an employee and treat them like that so that they learn the ropes, learn the business. And by the time they take over from you, they are more than qualified to be sitting in that seat that you're leaving for them.
Thank you, Dr. Abu. I think there's a place for immersing the child from young as well. You can groom them from the beginning so they understand what the business is about rather than just throwing it on top of them.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have a question from Okafo, and he says, for a new company registered in 2022, and have done I'm a small business, am I expected to pay tax for 2022? Am I not covered by the 1 year leverage?
So that's a question that Dr. Falashade is more equipped to answer. But from a regulatory perspective, compliance perspective, as CAC, I already mentioned that there's a 1 year moratorium, not a 1 year, an 18-month period where you're not expected to file anything. So if you're registered in 2022, even if it was in January, I don't think we're just nearing the 18-month timeline just about now. So what you are required to file at the CAC is a statement of affairs, and that is just a one-pager that says this business was sort of this time. We have done just a snapshot of your finances and saying we haven't made any profit or we haven't done anything that demands or requires us to submit a full annual returns and financial statements to the Companies Affairs Commission. So from a regulatory perspective, you are not required to do much at this stage, but by, I think, July, if you're registered early in 2022, or whenever you are registered, before the end of this year, you'll be expected or you are required to file a return. And the cost is not significant. I think it's 5,000 to file a statement of affairs, so it's nothing consequential. Dr. Falashade will answer the part about the tax expectation or the requirement for filing your taxes when she comes back on the call.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions. She's back. 2 more questions, and then we'll move on to Dr. Falashade. So the next question is from Isoke, and she says, what is the main instrument for corporate governance in Nigeria? I'm not sure if she needs to expand on that, but that's the question.
A bit unclear when you say main instrument. My understanding of that question will be which organ or agency is responsible for enforcing the implementation of corporate governance. That institution is the Financial Reporting Council. that was created by virtue of an act of the National Assembly. So it's an agency of government, and they are the ones that have the responsibility for monitoring the implementation or compliance of companies with the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, which we referenced during the conversation. So based on my understanding, that's the answer, is the FRC, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria.
Thank you. And final question, some people are asking if they will be able to have access to your slides at the end of the webinar. I'm not sure if that's possible.
We're happy to share the slides with the HQ and for the HQ to share it with everyone that was in attendance.
Awesome.
I've already shared the slides actually, so the HQ will circulate.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, so is Dr. Folashade present? If she is, we're going to move on now to understanding risks and consequences of non-compliance. I think you're on mute, Ma.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Sincere apologies. I've had a lot of IT glitches, but I think we will take it from here. So greetings from the Executive Chairman, Mr. Yodele Subar, and the management of Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. Mrs. Anne has done a lot in speaking to enthroning good corporate governance and with specific focus on MSMEs. I work in the informal sector, and then I basically call myself a Yati Ogoyibo because in the informal sector, it's not an issue of English, it's an issue of trading and ensuring that you go home every day with funds or income or profits to meet the needs of the family. So I'll be speaking today on enthroning good corporate governance. I'll try as much as possible not to spend too much time speaking to a lot of things that Mrs. Anne has done justice to. So I will find a way to navigate myself to issues that have to do with government and MSMEs and how they can stay on the right side of the law. Thank you. They'll have to help me with my PowerPoint because I'm having to have my internet on my phone and the laptop on in case there's a glitch on the laptop. So have given ownership to WIMBIZ to help me present my slides. So definition of corporate governance, we've had it all. It's just ability to operate a business in a sustainable and accountable manner. Because yes, you might be the owner of your business, but you're accountable to a lot of people. You would likely have stakeholders, investors. In other regards, you're accountable to the government and knowing what laws and policies direct or have sway in the type of businesses that you go into, and ensuring that you treat your staffs right so that you don't have to go before the court of law, and also laws with respect to NAFDAC and a lot of other things. So corporate governance or governance is the art or process of governing, of leading, of managing a business, a process, and it concerns the extent to which organizations are run in an open and honest manner and with integrity. Thank you. Okay, so Mrs. Anna has also spoken about the Cadbury Committee UK definition of corporate governance being a system which companies are directed and controlled. And so I think maybe we can just scroll just briefly through the definitions and move on to the next slide. Okay, so there are 4 P's with respect to corporate governance. It has to do with people, process, performance, and purpose. The people, the process is driven by people. The people ensure performance or negatively or positively, and then the people drive the purpose the vision and the mission of the company. So it's important that you get round pegs in round holes. You have people that can drive your vision and your mission. It's important also to ensure that corporate governance is established or enshrined, that you have the right process in place, because people will then be guided by process. You don't have to micromanage people. There will be processes and structures that would guide the business, and the people that you employ or the people that deal with you or transact with you or your stakeholders will be able to look into your processes and structures and be able to have confidence that the processes and the structures that you have put in place are able to ensure that you are a company that enshrines or works by the dictates of corporate governance. And this will definitely cascade to the type of performance that the company will be able to reflect. And that performance will then bring about trust in your stakeholders and your clients to be able to know that this is a business that is run on the purpose or the structure of corporate governance. And you'll then be able to fulfill the purpose or the mission and the vision of the corporate organization. Thank you. So I'm not going to be speaking too much on this because, as I said, Mrs. Ann has done a lot, but I just still need to reiterate it a bit. Because for MSMEs, yes, most of us think, oh, we are small business, nobody is seeing us, we're in the informal sector, it's a shadow economy, we can do things as we like or as we can until when we now become a conglomerate. But the reality is that the beginning and the foundation of a business and what you put in place in that business is what would translate you to become a conglomerate, an organization to be reckoned with. Accountability to the people you employ, accountability with respect to laws that govern you. So you are in a state or in any country in Nigeria, or maybe we have people here in the diaspora that are listening to us. It's important you know the laws that govern you. Or it's important you know the government organizations or parastatals that you have to speak with or you have to get guidance from. Yes, most of us register enterprise, business name and all that. But in registering the business name comes a lot of requirements also. You have to file every year. You have to have a tax ID number. You have to also, where you employ tax.
She's gone when she's talking about the good stuff. Tax ID number.
I think
let's give Mrs. Coker some time to probably join back. We'll give her
Okay, please, I would like WIMBIZ to also mute me on my other, my phone, because when I go out of this, then I'll be able to use my phone, please. So please unmute me on the phone. Thank you.
Please spotlight Dr. Coker.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Apologies. As I said, for people that have businesses, you have to know the cost of registering an entrepreneurship business name or a corporate organization, because with each registration that you do comes a government obligation that you need to know. So it's important that you know that before registering, because I see a lot of people that say, oh, I want to register a limited liability company. And they really do not know that with that limited liability company comes a lot of obligations, with all the way from the local government to the state and to the federal. Then also the issue of fairness in your transactions, both with your staff and your clients. Transparency. Do you have a mission? Do you have a vision? Is it clear? Your terms of engagement, your employment, the structure of your organization, bringing people on board, the board of directors where you have one, or where you just have to register a business name and you put yourself and you put your child. The child being an infant, the implications on registering an account with the bank, the implication on when you have to do a letter to access your funds or transfer funds. Then assurance of corporate governance within that structure. The leadership of the organization, what's the leadership made of? Did you take time to look into that and ensure that the people you have put on your board are credible people? Because when you put people on your board and they are found to be culpable or liable to maybe non-filing or all that, it has an impact and an implication on your company, because or they have other companies where they are board of directors and it's been involved in fraudulent issues. So you need to pay attention to detail when you are taking up people to be on the leadership of your organization, because it can have an impact, a negative or positive impact on the way that the organization is being seen by the public. Then stakeholders management. Do you have stakeholders engagement, both in-house and with your clients? Do you have clear structures and directives that they can be guided by? And what is your stakeholders management? What is it made of? The directors, did you just choose someone, or did you choose someone with credibility and integrity to ensure that when your board is being looked up and people want to invest, they see that you have credible stakeholders, people that are of integrity, and they have done well in other areas and climes, and people would have trust that their money or investment is in good hands. Thank you. Then the framework for good corporate governance. It's often looked at as the bedrock of an organization, and it governs and should design how effective your boards are, the transparency around the roles. Did you choose someone to be the head of HR because you have a close relationship, or does the person actually have the requisite skills, knowledge, and expertise to be the head of HR? Do you choose people to head directorates or units, or how transparent are your roles? Do you give it to people like Jobberman or all that to put up those roles for people that have the requisite skills and experience to fill? Or do you just look for people, oh, he's my friend or my cousin, or you can fill this role? So it's important for corporate governance that you are able to explain all
I think we've lost Dr. Coker. Yes, we have. Thank you for your patience. We understand that we have these issues, but yeah, please hold on while she connects again.
So apologies, my phone has not been unmuted, so I could not transit. I'm sorry about that. So driving sustainable business practices also. Please, can we move on to the next slide? So what does good corporate governance look like? Important that a structure or an organization that is premised on good corporate governance is transparent and has data-driven policies, that the business practice and the internal processes are clear and understandable by the people that interface with the organization, that the board the CEO's relationship is made a priority, where you have a CEO that has good working relationship with the board, where it is not a servant master kind of thing, and it's a leader that is also a servant leader heading as the CEO, where the compliance is balanced with performance. The corporate governance would look with one having sound risk management and internal control systems that are implemented. So it's not something that you just have to have look pretty on a book or a manual, but it's sound risk management and internal controls that you actually implement to ensure that you put up a face of the organization and it is seen as having, not only as having, but in all dealings with that organization, there is good corporate governance enshrined there. Then ensuring that your directors have requisite skills and knowledge. Having, as I said earlier, having an HR person that doesn't have the requisite HR training, and you are seeing a lot of turnover in your staff turnover, and you are wondering what exactly is happening, or the leave has strewed in a way that everybody is going on leave at the same time because someone within the HR has not taken time to do a calendar and have people update when they should be going on leave, and ensuring that at any given point, the whole department or unit is not left without a staff. Then appointing a competent chairperson with exceptional skills, leadership qualities, and then continuous pursuit of opportunities for improvement. Do you take your staff on training? Do you ensure that they are trained not only for purpose of training, but they are trained to be able to perform better within their job function? What are the benefits of good corporate governance? One is financial viability. Any investor would look at that organization and see that it is worthy to be invested in. Then improve business opportunities. A lot of people would want to invest in the business. They want to do business with you. You have referrals to clients, and the clients, based on those referrals and interface with others, would see you as a good investment company. Avoidance of penalties for non-compliance. So this, I'm going to dwell a lot on this because you need to understand as an SME that one, when you open a business, that's why I advise people that sometimes you have no business opening an actual office until you are ready to fulfill a lot of legal obligations. You need to know what the local government laws are, the lock-up shop deals that you'll be asked to pay. If you have a signage, the LASA fees that you'd have to pay. If you are a business enterprise or you are a company, for business, you have to register as the owner of a business. You have to be registered for direct assessments. If you have employees, are the employees on contract? Are they permanent staff? You must register them for purpose of payee. Then also you must pay business name on an annual basis. For the first year of business, you will be expected to pay 10,000 naira, and every other year for business name, you will be expected to pay 5,000 naira on your business name. Then for everyone that is a member of your business, you will be expected to pay 100 naira development levy per annum. Then where you have to do with things that are governed by VAT, luxury goods, you would also be expected to register with the federal government, the FIRS, to remit your VAT. Then where you are into something that has to do with consumption tax, you have an eatery, you have a restaurant, you'd have to register for purpose of consumption tax. And agents of government that must remit that payment to the government. So you need to know all this. So for schools also, you are into schools. You need to know the education tax. You need to register with the Ministry of Education. So there are lots of things that you need to know. You are signing an agreement. You need to know that you have to do stamp duty. So there's a requisite that you have to do stamp duty when you sign an agreement. You are going into a joint venture, maybe to build houses and resell. Then you also need to do stamp duty on your documents and also on the joint venture. So your employees also, you have to boost, the benefits also is that you boost their morals. And avoidance of penalties, you see that sometimes you find companies that will say, oh, they came to steal our companies. You have to file your returns as an individual. Every individual, if you're employed in a company for the employees, and then the employees also must file returns on an annual basis. So for businesses that are registered, you have to file your returns between the 1st of January and the 31st of January.
Okay, so once again, we'll give Ms. Dr. Coker some time to switch devices. I'm sure she'll be back soon. And I can see the questions in the chat. If you're using the Q&A function as well, so that we can ask all these questions at the end of Dr. Coker's session.
Sorry, sincere apologies. I need admin to please unmute me on my phone so I can switch seamlessly, please. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this, but Nigeria happens to us all. As I was saying, if you do not file your returns before the 31st of March,
I wonder if Dr. Coker's connection might be more stable if she turns on her video.
We now,
Dr. Coker?
Yes.
Could you switch off your video? Maybe that will help with your bandwidth.
No. We are having an internet problem in the office, so it's
okay. Okay, so we'll just wait for her to join again. So perhaps even if with the video off, it will we'll still have this issue. Eidtion, could you please watch out for her phone so that you can unmute as soon as she joins?
okay. So sincere apologies, it's not a video issue. It's just unfortunate that we're having this issue today. We now do a best of judgment for you, and the best of judgments would not be friendly, because we are hoping that the best of judgments would make you or motivate you to now come out to declare what you actually earn. So where you earn ₦1 million, we can give you 2 million. And we are hoping that the 2 million would make you sincerely declare, because it's important that you sincerely declare your income, and you're on the right side of the law. And unfortunately now, we've plugged in with the banks. So for those that are entrepreneurs and usually travel to Turkey, Dubai, and all that, for you to access PTA now, you need to show evidence of 3 years tax payments. So it's important that you go to the nearest tax station close to you to file your returns. And when you start a business, it's important that you also go to the tax station to register your presence before they get to you. Because when they get to you before you register at the tax office, that means that you are already moving through the mode of becoming recalcitrant or a tax avoider or evader. So please visit. We have 40 tax stations spread across the states. We have 40 mini tax stations also very close to markets and high streets. So you have over 80 tax station options. And then we have the head office. And then we have the e-tax platform also, where you can access all these things online. And whether out of state, in diaspora, you can go on the e-tax and file your returns, register your business, get a payer ID number. So I know that now I'm swaying away from corporate governance, but it's important that for you to be compliant and to have a good corporate governance structure, you need to know what taxes, what levies, what dues, what fines, what charges you need to pay as a business person to be able to stay in business. Because good corporate governance culture and projection will be impacted where, as an organization, today they are sealing you for VAT, tomorrow they are sealing you for non-filing, next tomorrow they are sealing you for not remitting taxes. So
once again, sincere apologies. We will give Dr. Hooker some time to join back. I'm sure her session is almost over as well, so thank you for holding on. I appreciate you guys. Once she's done, we can move on to questions, and either Mrs. Agbo or Dr. Coker will take the questions that have been asked. And we are making notes of all the questions that you're asking. So thank you for sending questions in. Let's just give her a few more minutes.
So can we move on to the next slide? Okay, so maybe
Could we unmute Dr. Hooker? She seems like she's muted. Okay, do we have Mrs. Ann here? Yes, she's here. We have a few more questions. So maybe if we start asking while Dr. Coker sorts out her internet, that'd be fine.
That's totally fine with me.
Okay, all right. So we have a question from Rita, and she says, I understand that the limitation on number of seats of family relatives on boards is 2. In addition, what is the maximum tenure for these board members?
Okay, so the previous code of corporate governance had a tenure of, I think, 12 years, a total of 12 years for board members, that's non-executive board members. But the new code doesn't have any tenure for directors generally. It just says that the ones that are independent directors can serve for a maximum period of 9 years. So the tenure that we have currently defined in the code is restricted to 9 years. But I know that the other sectoral codes, which have now all become guidelines, still have a period of 12 years. So ideally, generally in practice, a director shouldn't serve for more than 12 years.
All right, thank you. Do we have Dr. Coker back, or should I ask more questions? Okay, Claire asks, are there corporate governance institutions in Nigeria that one can become a member of?
Corporate governance institutions, I think there are. I think there's the Society for Corporate Governance. I think that's one. And for directors, there's also the Institute of Directors, the IOD. There might be one or two more that I can't recollect right now, but I know that you have the Society for Corporate Governance in Nigeria.
Thank you. Okay, someone says, if a school is not run as a business, but rather as a faith-based outfit, would it still be required to pay taxes?
That's right up Dr. Coker's alley.
I think she should be back.
She's back on, yes, she is.
Can we unmute her if possible?
So I think since I'm having a lot of, I think I should just go into questions so that I save time, and the questions will definitely address some of the concerns. I'm so sorry and I apologize. I don't know what to say, but Nigeria happens. Sincere apologies.
No worries, Mrs. Coker.
Yeah, I should have stayed at home and used my fiber one, but I'm in the office and this has happened. Sincere apologies about that. So let's go into questions, please.
Okay, did you hear the question I just asked, or should I ask again?
Please kindly do that. Thank you.
Okay. If a school is not run as a business, but rather as a faith-based outfit, would it still be required to pay taxes?
Okay, thank you. So whether business or faith-based, I'm sure you'd have staff that you pay salaries to. And where you have staff that you pay salaries to, then everyone that earns an income is expected to pay tax. Also, as a faith-based school, you also still need to file returns, even if it is nil returns, based on the fact that it is not profit inclined. So you must register for purpose of your pay. It's just like an embassy. An embassy has expatriates and all that, or diplomats, but they also have local staff that work within the embassy. So for that purpose, those local staffs must be registered for purpose of tax, because they are residents in Nigeria and maybe in Lagos and earn an income within the state. And so the organization must file returns on their behalf and pay the required taxes on their behalf. So I hope that has answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Coker. Okay, the next question is, if it is possible to give a range of charges to informal, is it possible to give a range of charges to informal businesses in the same sector? I'm not sure.
Okay, Well, the question is not too clear, but well, you said charges and informal sector, so I'll work with that. So the first thing I'll say is that in Lagos State, the state decided to create what is called a presumptive tax. The presumptive tax is 8,100. And the reason for this is because we understand that in the informal sector, a lot of people are not learned. They do not keep books of accounts. They do not have income and expenditure profile or books. So the government is trying to ensure that everyone is tax compliant. So they decided to create what is called a benchmark tax, the lowest, and that is 8,001 for people within the market to pay for a year. So per annum, they're expected to pay 8,001 to fulfill their tax obligation. However, where we now find out through profiling and other things that you are not expected to be on the presumptive tax, which is supposed to be for people that have cake lamps or sell on trays or on the roadside, and you pay that 8,001. The 100 naira is the development levy I spoke of earlier. So when you pay the 8,001 and we find out that you just bought an LR or you are registering a land in Ikorodu or Ikeja, then we will then upgrade you to direct assessment, and then we would add back all the years that you have shortchanged the government. So it's important for corporate governance to be a person or company of integrity and to be transparent and to honestly declare your income and pay the requisite tax on that. So that is very key for corporate governance too. So there is a benchmark tax for people that are in the informal, and it is 8,1. But for people that have the ability to either rent a shop or buy a shop, you are not an informal person. To rent or buy a shop, you would have gone into an agreement. So that means that you are lettered, you are knowledgeable, you have signed an agreement, and that rent or that purchase of shop is income in your hands and income that should be declared. So I hope that has answered that question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, you have. How can one manage the registration and remittance of employee payee if the employee turnover is high?
Okay, so registering, we have 40 tax stations, as I've said, and they are spread across the state. So on Google or on eTax, you can find the location of any of those 40 mini tax stations and close to you and go there to register. Advices will be given. You'll be told the forms, the documents, and everything to bring. And then on a monthly basis is something that you can do by yourself by going on the tax portal. And in the comfort of your office, your home, or you're outside the country, you can file returns for all your staff and then also make the schedule of payments once you pay their payee every month. So no matter the number of staffs that you do have, there is an opportunity and a structure and a system where you can register them for purpose of tax and have that done on a monthly basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone has asked, Ruben has asked, what if the directors are family members? Does the 12-year rule still apply? 12-year
rule with respect to?
I think it was, I think you answered the question. Was it
I answered the first part of that question, and the answer is yes, it does still apply.
Okay. All right. So a question is, can you share some of the taxes or levies a business ought to pay and the durations for the payments?
Okay, thank you. So as I said, there are two types of business structures. You're either a sole proprietor, that's a one-man business, or you registered a limited liability company. So for sole proprietors, most of your taxes will be due to the state because it's an individual. So once it's an individual, an enterprise, most of the taxes are due to the state. So as an owner, you will be on direct assessment. So it is expected that you self-assess yourself every year between 1st of January and 31st of March, and that you honestly declare and pay the taxes due on what you have self-assessed yourself. The other option is that maybe you have an enterprise and you are structured for purpose of payee because you have other staff. So you can also register at a tax station and do the schedule of payment to be on payee. And every month you deduct from your income and the income of your staff and you remit to the station, to the government. Another thing you also have to do is that when you are registering, you are supposed to pay for business name. Business premise. The business premise, as I said earlier, the first year is 10,000. Thereafter is 5,000 every single year in business. Another tax you'll be expected to pay is, or levy, is the development levy. The development levy has been 100 naira for the past like 40 years. So every individual in that business is expected to remit 100 naira per annum to the government when you are paying your taxes. Also, it's also a one-off per annum payment. Then, as I said, if you are in the business of recreation, event center, and all that, you would also have to register for consumption tax. The consumption tax is borne by taxpayers, but you are an agent of government for purpose of collection. So it's like a luxury payment. So anybody that buys drinks or rents an hotel or rents a room or an event center from you, you're expected to deduct a level for consumption tax and to remit. Then for people that are registered for limited liability, you would have to register in the state of residence of your staff for their payee. So their payee, if they are resident in Lagos, will be due to the LIRS, although the company income tax will be due to the federal government. And also where you are into businesses like baking and all that, you would have to also pay, deduct and remit VAT. The VAT is called value added tax. So you have to do that also to the federal government. Then the local government would come for lock-up shop. You have to pay lock-up shop. If you have a signage, you have to pay LASA dues. The LASA dues also will be charged based on the square meter of your signage. So where you can avoid signage when you're starting up, it's important. But once you have a signage or a flex banner, it incurs charges. So it's important that you know what charges and who they should be paid to and when. So between the 1st of January and 31st of March, you have to pay your direct assessment. Between the 1st and 10th of every month, you have to have remitted your payee for your staff. The payee is pay as you earn. So as your staffs earn, you must deduct tax and remit on or before the 10th of every month, but starting from when they have been paid. So if they are paid before the 31st of the previous month, as you are paying them, you must deduct and remit to the government. So a lot of people complain and say, oh, I worked with this person and oh, they have not paid, I paid my taxes and I cannot get my tax clearance. You must also ensure that although your company deducts from your salary, that they remit. It's one thing for an organization to deduct. It's another thing for them to remit. So in line with our conversation of corporate governance, you as an owner of a business, you must make sure that when you deduct from the salaries of your staff, you must remit. That money is not an investment fund for you to quickly go and invest or to go and fix. It's for you to remit so that you can maintain proper corporate governance outlook for people that want to invest in your organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of one of our board members for WIMBIZ, Mrs. Bisi Adeyemi. Thank you for your presence. Okay, so the next question, a lady has asked about, I'll find it now. She says, I want to register payee for my sister's company, and part of the requirement is a director TCC. Please, is it possible to get TCC for a housewife because she was not working before now? She started the business February 2023 and the company was registered in January 2023.
Okay, thank you. So the beauty of it, that's where filing of returns comes in. So you have the ability and the right to file nil returns. But now, the lady in question would likely not have filed her returns. You must ensure that you file. There are 2 returns you must file. You must file with CAC once your company or business is registered, and then you must file with the tax authority in the state that you are resident. So she would likely not have filed returns all these years. Now she's being made a director in that company, and if she had been filing nil returns, it should have been easy for her to have gotten a tax clearance certificate. So a TCC is a tax clearance certificate. So that tax clearance certificate would have read that, oh, she never earned an income all those years, and should have been able to use that tax clearance certificate for the purpose that she wants it to be used now. So she should still go to the tax station, and if she's able to prove that she is a housewife, and then she must tell us, so we categorize those people as dependents. So that means that she's dependent on someone. So she must also honestly declare who she's dependent on, who feeds her, who clothes her, who takes care of her. Because if she's not earning an income, she's a dependent. She will be taken like a baby, and somebody must be feeding her and taking care of her. So when she's able to show who is feeding her and taking care of her, and we are able to see that that person is tax compliant and has been paying taxes, and that the income of that person is commensurate to be able to take care of that person and this dependent, then she'll be cleared. So it all goes back to what Mrs. Ann has been saying. Corporate governance is about transparency, sincerity, declaring honestly, and putting up an organization and a structure that ensures that people can deal with you, knowing that what you have put on social media is who you actually are. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the case that they haven't done this, and so what is the ramification?
Yeah, so the lady in question must go to the tax station, and then she'll be advised and guided. But the reality, as I've said, is that is she a dependent? Who is paying for all her welfare? Is that person tax compliant? For the purpose of director, will she be able to get a TCC? Can she file out of time? So they might likely not be able to use her because she has not been filing, and it's a requisite that she's tax compliant and she doesn't have that filing. But let her visit a tax station, and they'll definitely be able to guide and advise her as to what to do.
Okay,
thank you.
And I think we have time for one more question. Could you please explain the tax requirement for a retiree who engages in an informal business after retirement?
Okay, so it's the end of an era and the beginning of another. So she's retired from a business or an employment, and I believe that while she was in that employment, the owner of that business herself or someone else would have been deducting and hopefully remitting. Now she has retired from that business and she's now working in her own business. She has her own business. So she must register that new business for purpose of tax. She must register it. So if it's an enterprise or a business name, she must register it, and she must file returns, as I said, between the 1st of January and 31st of March of every year. And in that filing, she must honestly declare what income she has earned in the preceding year, her profits in the preceding year, and she must pay the requisite tax on it. So for people in the direct assessment, they pay on preceding year. So this is 2023, she'll be paying tax on income or profit earned in 2022. And then for people that are in employment, they would be paying tax on income earned on a monthly basis and remitting that. So that's majorly the difference. So if she was in an employment before and she had a tax card or a tax history, she can then write and say, oh, I was in First City Monumental Bank before, but now I am now in a business of my own. I will still want to have that, my tax history and all my payments. And I would like to let you know that I am now in this business. And they would now transit her statement into her new name of business. And so she'll be able to have that history. So anytime they want to know whether she's been tax compliant in the previous years, all that history that she has transited to her new status now will be available to her, like we have it in our statement of accounts that we can print all the way to 10 years or 20 years. So I hope that has been able to address the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coker. All right, so some people are asking how to get in touch with you or any other representative for additional support with filing returns with the CAC.
Okay, so ours is not filing returns with the CAC, it's filing returns with the LIRS. I think Madam Anne will be able to guide them better on the CAC, and I'm sure CAC is also there. You can always walk in and find out you want to file returns. Of course, if you've not been filing, you would have to pay some penalty. I know there's a levy of 500. I know there's another one of 3,500, and you have to multiply that by the number of years that you have not filed your returns and pay that to be in good standing with the CAC. But to file your returns with LIRS, you can visit any of our 40 tax stations or 40 mini tax stations. If you are in the informal, you can contact me. But if you are on payee or you have a proper company registered, then you can go to the tax stations. For those that are still micro and all that, you can definitely contact me and we'll be able to advise you as to the mini tax station and closest to you for ease of doing business that you can always visit whenever you have concerns or want to do the needful and be in right standing on corporate governance. Thank you.
So what would be the best way to contact you?
Okay, maybe for now, you can avail them my email. I know that every business must have an email. So yes, and I can also give my number, but in case you call me and I do not pick up, then you can please send me a message and I'll definitely reply to your message or have someone attend to you. So I don't know if I can call my number now.
Yes, please go ahead and someone will type it in there.
Okay. So my number is 080 28 29 74 43. 08.
I think we've lost Dr. Cook. Mrs. Ann Agbo, would you like to comment on
Yes, thank you very much, Eminem. So just to confirm that we're able to help you with updating all your outstanding filings at the CAC. I think we've already posted our contact information in the chat box, so kindly reach out to us at any time and we'll take up the conversation from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I think we've, so I think we've covered questions. I think I asked everyone's questions. Hopefully everyone has gotten an answer. Basically, walk to your tax office or drive, and you'll be able to get more information, if you need help. And also DCRS and LIRS will be able to help you, and the information is there in the chat. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ann Agbo and Dr. Folashade Coker, for all you have done for us today. You've given us a wealth of information. I have like plenty notes, so you can't see it because of my background. But I'd like to call up our chair, Programs Committee, Mrs. Molade Adeniyi, for the announcements and closing remarks. Our beautiful chair.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Can I please see a round of applause for our speakers today? What a session it was. Do you know how difficult it is to make this, this is a very hard topic, hard in terms of you can never get your head around it. And I think they've done an amazing job, including Dr. Coker, who was so resilient despite all of the internet challenges. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Agbo. Thank you so much, Dr. Coker. You have demystified everything corporate governance. What I need to know when I'm starting a business. I have learned so much today. Thank you. And can we also give a round of applause to our moderator as well, for remaining cool, calm, and collected throughout it all. The questions even made it richer. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session. And I hope that you have learned, more than one or two things, and you're ready to elevate your businesses to the next level. And in all of those areas where maybe you were falling short, you have learned what you need to do. Thank you to both organizations as well. I'd like to remind us all that we need your evaluation. I know that, the WIMBIZ team have dropped the evaluation link in the chat. Please fill out that evaluation. We want to know what didn't, what we can do better. If there's a topic, you would like us to deal with in such a manner. I love these practical sessions. So please let us know so that we can improve and give you exactly what you need to sort of transform your businesses. The beauty of practical sessions is that they really help you, you have actual takeaways and things you can start implementing from tomorrow. Thank you to our sponsors, DCSL Corporate Services Limited and the Lagos State Internal Revenue Services. Thank you for sponsoring this amazing webinar. This is just the beginning. If you'd like to hear more, if you'd like a part 2 of this, can I please ask that you put in the chat, we want a part 2. We want a part 2. Let's see that so that we can, our sponsors are in the room and they can see when we come back knocking that we need a part 2 of this. I feel like there's so much to unpack and the time is not enough. Yes, we want part 2. I want part 2 as well. I'd like to also making sure that I don't miss any of my announcements. We invite you all to become a WIMBIZ associate. There's many reasons, many benefits to joining WIMBIZ and becoming an associate. I know some people come to all of these events and we welcome everyone, but there's even more benefits to joining a WIMBIZ, to joining WIMBIZ as an associate. If you would like to become an associate, the link has also been dropped in the chat. The link is on there. For more information and you just want to know what does this truly mean, please send an email to membership@wimbiz.org. We have another upcoming webinar coming up for women in boards. Can I see women who are looking to go on boards, women who are already on board, women who are saying, on my vision board for 2023, I wrote down, I want to be a part of a board. The women on board, the WIM Board Institute has a training coming up on principles of board performance and effectiveness, Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance again. So even if you're in here, there's already a part 2, in there as well. So please register. It's a paid event. And one of the benefits of being an associate is that you actually get a lower fee than non-members. So the registration link is on there at the moment. I see those hands. I see all of those, board women on here. Thank you. I see those who have registered already. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. So the registration link is in the chat. Make sure that you take advantage of this. You're going to be learning from amazing people, value for money, amazing value for money. So please follow us on all of our social media platforms, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. They're going to come up right now. Tag us. Let's share tidbits from today. Let's tell all of those that missed today, that didn't join. Let's show them a little bit of what they missed. So please share your favorite quote, your favorite learning, the things you're going to be doing going forward. Please follow us on all of our social media platforms. And once you do that, please tag at WIMBIZ as well. Visit the website for more information as well. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the session. Before we close out, I want us to flood the chat again with your favorite emoji. Whatever your favorite emoji is, just drop it in the chat as we begin to say, have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining. There's so much more in store at WIMBIZ, so follow us. Make sure you don't miss out on all of the amazing upcoming events coming up. It's been amazing. Thank you again to our sponsors, DCSL, and to the LIRS. Thank you to our amazing speakers, Mrs. Agbo and Dr. Coca, and of course to our excellent moderator for today, Mrs. Eidtion. God bless you all. Have an amazing, amazing rest of the day. Bye.